He has a forthcoming book, To End a Presidency, The Power of Impeachment. Thank you for joining me on a significant news night. Your view as a legal matter of what this new information about this attempt to order the firing of Bob Mueller means to this investigation.
Well, thanks for having me, Ari. I think this means a great deal. Before we learned that in June the president had actually ordered the firing of the special prosecutor, Robert Mueller, we knew a great deal already. We knew that he had fired Comey. He had tried to make it look like he was firing him because he didn't like the way he'd handled Hillary Clinton's emails, but he told Lester Holt on national TV that it had to do with the Russia thing. We knew all kinds of things about the president, but all of them were a bit ambiguous. Maybe he simply didn't know the rules of the game. He didn't know the ropes yet. He was clueless. But now we know that after a conversation with Don McGahn, his White House counsel, who must have warned him of how serious a problem he would be in if he had another Saturday night massacre of the kind that Nixon had, that after being warned, he was still so determined to prevent the probe into the Russia thing, into the way Russia played a role in our election, that he ordered McGahn to fire the special counsel.
And Professor Tribe, I just want to pause on the point you make before you go on. You just sort of swung through very quickly, because I know how fast your brain works, a very key observation. You're saying that your understanding of this role, your knowledge of the presidency and the way White House counsels work, is that this entire operation would have necessarily included Don McGahn having already discussed and warned to the president how serious this would be?
That's certainly right. Don McGahn is a professional. He's got a reputation as a very fine lawyer. He would be committing malpractice as White House counsel if he didn't alert the president. So the president said, I don't care. I want him gone. I want him gone. And I order you to get rid of him. And there are various things that Don McGahn could have done to carry out that crime. And it would have been a crime because it clearly would have been an ongoing obstruction of an important piece of the system of justice. But not wanting to commit a crime, and perhaps worried about how he had already been implicated in the firing of Comey and in trying to pressure Jeff Sessions not to recuse himself, Don McGahn did what any decent lawyer would do, and that is to say, Mr. President, I will not commit this crime. I can't do it. In fact, if you make me do it, I'll quit. And of course, at that point, the president backed off. But it shows a great deal about his corrupt motives and eliminates the possibility of any defense that he was simply a novice at the political game and he didn't know what he was doing. It eliminates all of that, that but for McGahn's threat to resign, he would have carried this out. And he's been talking continually about considering the possibility of firing Robert Mueller. Now, there's no conceivable explanation of that other than the fact that what Robert Mueller knows and is likely to bring forward is terribly incriminating for the president. And I think we are right on the verge of some kind of explosion. When Mueller said, I want to interview you, and Trump, after getting advice from his lawyers, might say, well, I really don't feel comfortable with it, if that's what he says, he will be ordered to appear. He will be subpoenaed. If he defies that subpoena, he will be defying a court order. And that will lead to a constitutional explosion, and even among loyal Republicans.
When you say that you know this would have been an illegal act, and that Don McGahn knew it would have been an illegal act, in plain English, how do you know that?
Well, because I've read the United States Criminal Code. It would not be simply a potentially impeachable offense. It would be an out-and-out crime, because it would be an interference with an ongoing investigation with a corrupt purpose. A corrupt purpose simply means to hide the truth, to protect yourself or your inner circle or your family. You know, when he fired Comey, it was at least conceivable that he was doing it for one of the other reasons that he gave,
right,
though not the reason he gave Lester Holt. Maybe he was doing it because he thought Comey had not conducted himself well across the board. Comey, after all, was the head of the whole FBI. Mueller was appointed because Comey was fired, and Mueller's whole mandate was to look into the role of Russia, a hostile foreign power, in interfering with the central act of American democracy, our presidential election. So Donald Trump can't plead ignorance. He can't plead, naivete. He knows what he's doing. And what he's doing is using, in this case it would have been Don McGahn, to interfere with an ongoing investigation for a purely corrupt reason. And that would have been a crime, a federal crime, seriously punishable.
Professor Tribe, you have laid out with great clarity why there is a federal criminal liability for the person who would carry out that order, as well as the related constitutional implications. Right. I appreciate you joining us on this big news night, Harvard Law Professor Laurence Tribe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
For more on this historic news, I turn to former Watergate Special Prosecutor Nick Ackerman and former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade, two people who've given a lot of thought to this situation, the Nixon history on the massacre side, as well as this possibility, because up until last night, all of this, I think, for us, was schooled in hypotheticals, some rumor because there was talk in June, but never a bulletproof, four-source, multiple publications saying this was a presidential order. So, Barbara, picking up where Professor Tribe left off, is it a fair reading of the four corners of this act to say there is no non-Russia probe reason on the facts to remove Mueller, and thus it looks like interfering with the Russia probe?
Well, it certainly looks like that. I think Robert Mueller would probably want to explore all of the facts about this before saying that it's a slam-dunk case of obstruction of justice. It certainly is additional evidence, I think, that bolsters the obstruction of justice charge. But I don't know that you have it alone. That corrupt intent is so important, understanding the motivation. President Trump says he was offended that Robert Mueller interviewed for the job of the FBI director one day and then was appointed special counsel the next. He's someone who perceives the FBI director as someone who works for him personally, is now on the other side. Maybe he did have some genuine thought that this was in some way disloyal. So I think you do have to look into what was his intent. But I agree with Professor Tribe that there is very strong evidence of obstruction of justice here. I think there's also strong evidence of something else that in the law we refer to as consciousness of guilt. That is some act that you do that indicates that you're guilty. If you nothing to hide, you would welcome the opportunity to be exonerated by someone with the reputation of Robert Mueller.
Nick, I want to play for you an incredible piece of tape of sound from different people, including the president, talking about this. I think we have enough evidence to say who is lying in this tape and who is simply totally misinformed and out of the loop, at least based on these new accounts. Take a listen.
The president is not discussing firing Bob Mueller.
Mr. President, have you thought about or considered leading the dismissal of the special counsel? Is there anything that Bob Mueller could do that you would send you in that direction?
I haven't given it any thought.
Are you considering firing Robert Mueller?
No, not at all.
Is he setting the stage for firing Bob Mueller?
No, there's no conversation.
There's no way he's going to fire him.
There's no conversation about that whatsoever in the White House.
No, I'm not. No. What else? What, are you surprised?
For the 1,000th time, we have no intentions of firing Bob Mueller.
The most high-ranking federal official in that series of clips is the one that we know is lying on this.
That's right. And just to follow up on what both of the guests have said tonight, there is a very strong motive here. And that motive all relates to Michael Flynn. If you follow the timeline in this, why was it that he fired Comey? Because Comey didn't drop the investigation into Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, back in December of 2016, was involved in that conversation with